Guys, and welcome back to Big Owl's Big Tattoos, and this video is a focus on the reasons why I have the tattoos that I have, the specific tattoos that I have, the reason why I chose them, the reasons why I like them, the reasons why I'll have them till the day I die. All my tattoos are of Celtic and Nordic in origin, in regards to the artistry and the imagery behind them. The reason for that is I have Celtic and Nordic heritage. On my father's side, it's sort of dual heritage, both Celtic and Nordic. On my mother's side, it's pure Celt. And so my representation of those ancient cultures on my skin is my way of showing respect to my ancestors and to their old ways. I have a very strong fascination for their cultures, as it is obviously flowing through my veins. And what I want to do now is I want to give you the exact reasons why I've had each specific tattoo on my body, what their meaning is, and what the story is that they're telling. But before we start on the specific tattoos, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of everything I've got. So I'm going to stand up and you can just have a quick look. So I obviously start at the neck, well, the bottom of the neck with the torque. I've got a chest tattoo here which is not finished. This is getting finished next in 2 days, I think it's 3 days time. I have my whole belly done, which is recently finished, and I have the whole of my left arm done. And I'm just trying to get this done in the right position. I have the entirety of my back done also. Okay. Now I haven't got my right arm done yet, but that is to be done fairly soon. It's just I like to work from one thing to another. So I did the whole of my left arm to start off with, then I did the whole of my back, then I did the whole of the front of my torso, and then I'll be moving on, as I say, onto my right arm very, very soon. Now, I'm going to start with my left arm, because this is where I started, and it also is a complete story as well to tell you. Okay, so my whole of my left arm represents the story of Ragnarok, okay, which is the Viking apocalypse. It's the story of how all the old gods die. The ones that you know, like Odin and Thor, for example, especially in pop culture. They're very, very popular at the moment with the Marvel films. But also some of the lesser gods that you, well, or the lesser known gods that you may not know. Okay. Now the story of Ragnarok, as I say, is the Viking apocalypse where everything dies. But don't be misunderstood, it's not the end of everything, because as it becomes the end of everything, it's also the beginning of everything. From death comes life. And the Vikings believed in many ways that it was a circle or recycling of life, that when everything was destroyed, there were some remnants of life left, and that life then flourished, blossomed, became a new life, and eventually would itself come to an end and give birth to, again, more a new life. Okay. Now, even the gods can be destroyed, and it's in Ragnarok where we see all of the gods, or at least the majority of the gods, getting killed by one another in this titanic war between the giants and what we would call the Asgardians these days, which were a mix of the Aesir and Vanir gods. Okay, the starter, the thing that starts it all is when this dragon here, Jormungandr, okay, Jormungandr, being one of the sons of Loki, was born of Loki, who was a giant, and his giantess mistress. And he, when born, is so big and grotesque, so ugly, that he's thrown out and cast aside out of Asgard and thrown down into Earth by Odin, the king of the Asgardian gods. When he hits Earth, he lands in the seas. And within the seas, he grows and grows and grows and continues to grow until he can grow, literally has filled all the space. He becomes that large that he can wrap himself around the entire world and bite onto his own tail. And a common representation of him is him biting onto his own tail. Now in this representation I have his tongue lashing around and going out, but nonetheless a common representation of Jormungandr is him biting his own tail, and that circle that he creates when he does so, the symbolic iconography behind it represents resurrection or reincarnation or recycling of life. And of course Jormungandr is the first thing, the first creature to start Ragnarok. It's the official start of Ragnarok when Jormungandr comes out of the seas and poisons the skies with the poison from his fangs. This is the start of Ragnarok. He destroys the skies, and so really that's why he's used to represent this sort of recycling of life, because he's the start of the end, but from the end comes a new beginning. Okay, so that's why often he's represented as a circle biting his own tail. Okay, and I represent him here in a more Celtic style dragon. As I say, I have both Celtic and Nordic origins, so I have the Nordic story but with Celtic artistry. That's how I like to represent it. Okay, now Jormungandr, as I said, was the child of Loki, and Loki is here on my south. Okay, Loki is commonly represented as a two-headed snake. However, when I was looking at tattoos, I couldn't find anything that I liked that was a two-headed snake, so I just got two snakes put together as my personal representation of Loki, the god of mischief. Commonly, he's described as the god who can commit both good and evil. That's his official description when you read any of the old Nordic sagas. And whenever they say his name, Loki, the god who can commit good and evil, literally, because he's seen as a villain and as an evil god, and in many ways he is, because he does bring along apocalypse, Ragnarok. But he's both good and evil. He's completely neutral in many ways. He commits atrocious acts, but he also normally corrects or fixes those acts with an act of good also, in the traditional sagas. But nonetheless, in this story, he is really the epitaph, so to speak, of evil, or of destruction at the very least, because destruction is in its own right, inherently, is not evil, right? But this Loki is represented here with the paired snakes. Now, Loki had two other children, as represented here. I'll let you just have a quick look there. The unusual tattoo, it's actually two tattoos joined together. The first tattoo is this crescent moon, very, very Celtic styled Celtic moon, crescent moon, okay? And then within it, you can see the detail in the hair, and that is a female all wrapped up and sort of bent over, crooked, and almost like a hag. Now, these two tattoos represent the two other children that played a major role within the story of Ragnarok. The moon represents Fenrir, the wolf, the beast. Fenrir was like Jormungandr, a savage beast when born, and he was feared, and he was chained up immediately almost. Okay, and when Odin gave his right eye, which is another story to tell, but gave his right eye, he sacrificed his right eye for ultimate wisdom and for foresight, the ability to tell the future. And when he did that, he saw that Fenrir was to be his death. Fenrir was going to tear out his throat with his fangs during Ragnarok. And so, as a result, this is why Valhalla exists, and I have Valhalla represented on my torso, as I'll get into in a minute. Valhalla exists because Odin was afraid of dying. He didn't want to cease in existence anymore, so he decided the best way for him to try and fight fate. He knew you can't change fate, but he wasn't going to go out without a fight. The best way he can slow down, or at least try to prevent this fate happening, was to build an army. And so when the bravest of men fought and died in battle, he would have a percentage of them come to him, to Valhalla, to form his personal army to defend him during Ragnarok. Now, one thing that is commonly not known is that there were actually two halls where men who died bravely in battle could go to. There's Valhalla, and there's one unnamed one, which I'll just call the Vanir, okay? Because the Aesir were a tribe of gods. Odin, Thor, they were all Aesir. But there were also another tribe of gods within the pantheon of Nordic gods called the Vanir, and they included Freya, okay? And Freya was a very powerful god, and she herself also had a hall where brave warriors could go, and it was her who had first pick of those warriors who died. She had the first half of them come to her, and the other half then went to Odin. So she was an influential god. So you didn't just go to Valhalla, you could go to this other unnamed hall that's not known much about in history. Okay, but as we say, Fenrir was the reason why these halls were essentially created, because the gods did not want to go down without a fight. However, Loki's daughter, Hela, which is where we get our word hell, okay, from, and our concept of hell from. Hela was the goddess of the underworld, essentially. when you were a wicked and evil man, or a man of cowardice, when you died in a way that was not fit for a Viking to die, you would go down to hell, most likely. And during Ragnarok, you would be used by Hela as a sort of undead army to assault Asgard. And so Hela played a major role within the invasion of Asgard also. And that's why she's represented here on my bicep. Okay. Now on my back of my arm, I have a pair of ravens, which is a little bit hard to see because of the awkwardness of their positioning. But you can probably see that the head there and the other raven here. So the two ravens joined with Celtic knots. Okay, the two ravens are my artistic representation of Odin. Odin had a pair of ravens which were an extension of himself, an extension of his own mind ultimately, called memory and thought. And when Odin slept, these ravens went out and allowed him to view all his realms. So he was omnipotent, he was completely aware of everything that happened within his realms. And that's why I got the ravens on my back of my arm, because of course Odin plays a major role within Ragnarok. He's the king of the Asgardians. He is the #1 target to kill, ultimately, so that's why he is represented. However, as I mentioned before, there were other gods, and the other most powerful god, other than Asgard, other than Odin and Thor, was Freya, who was from the tribe of the Vanir. Okay, and Freya is what I've represented with this symbol here, which is not an official symbol for Freya, but it's also a representation of my engagement to my girlfriend. So it does say a double meaning, but it's a man and woman holding together, each other, embracing one another in a symbol of love. And Freya was the goddess of love. However, she was also the goddess of war, and that to me looks like fire, a flame. Okay, and so I represented this dual symbol as Freya with her two dual natures, the goddess of war and the goddess of love. Basically, if you can't fuck it, kill it. That's her attitude, I suppose. And that's why she's represented, or how she's represented in this story on my arm here. I forget how she dies. I think she does die. Pretty much everyone died in Ragnarok. Not everyone. A couple of sons of Thor actually survived, but she was one of the ones who definitely, in my opinion, I think died, but I can't remember how. But she still plays a major role for me because I have a particular affinity to the Vanir tribe, as well as obviously the true Odinism, which is the Aesir gods. Okay. Now on my lower arm, you've got this bear, okay, and you have this ring, okay. Now the bear and the ring kind of come as a match pair, because one, they represented for me when I was in a car crash, they represented me and my girlfriend surviving the crash, fighting through our pain and our injuries, but they also represent some of the stories within the old myths that I'm about to get into now. First of all, the bear represents men, okay, because of course men were recruited, the dead men were recruited to fight for Odin and to fight for Freya in Ragnarok. And the bear is a symbol of the berserker. The berserker being those who were pretty much guaranteed to go to the halls of Valhalla and fight for Odin. They believed very much in Odinism. They believed very much in Odin's way of war, and they dedicated their entire existence to dying in battle for Odin. So the bear represents the berserkers, those who typically would most definitely end up in Valhalla, but all the men as well who would end up in Valhalla, which weren't just berserkers. There were several different, obviously any Viking could go to Valhalla, provided they died bravely and with valour, and they weren't chosen by Freya first. But the ring here represents the Valkyrie, okay? The Valkyrie were women who went to the fields of battle and chose which men would go to which hall. They went and collected the men for Odin and brought them back to Valhalla. On my fist you have Mjolnir. This is, or Mjolnir, I forget, I apologise if my pronunciations are off. Mjolnir, which is the hammer of Thor, okay? Thor is obviously a major part of the Ragnarok story. Him and Jormungandr do fight, and as I say, the beginning of Ragnarok is when Jormungandr rises from the seas and poisons the sky with his venomous fangs. Thor appears to fight Jormungandr, and they haven't. It is not the first time they've fought. It's just the first, but they've fought. I think 3 times during the reign of Asgard. But every time Jormungandr normally be able to kind of get out of Thor's grip, or would able to escape to some form or another, or would actually fight Thor off. But this time it was a fight to the death. But it was a fight to both of their deaths. Okay, and Thor would strike Jormungandr down with Mjolnir, his hammer, crush the serpent's skull. But during the fight, the dragon had bitten Thor and infected him with his venom. And so moments after Thor had destroyed the dragon, he himself fell down dead. His heart stopped. So Thor is obviously a strong representation. I'm trying to think of anyone else who Loki. He died fighting the Sentinel who protected the Bifrost, okay, the Rainbow Bridge from Asgard to Midgard, okay, and the Sentinel killed him, but he also killed the Sentinel. So there's a lot of like God killing gods at the same time. Fenrir, he was killed by, I think it was Tyr, okay, the son of Odin. He put his boot into his the mouth of the beast and literally ripped his jaw off. So you can imagine this story is very barbaric, very brutal. But once the dust settled, then life began again. And that's the beauty, I feel, of the Ragnarok story. I also have on my fingers some Nordic runes, which are the old translations of the Nordic runes. So if you were to go on the internet and Google sort of translation of these runes, you might actually just have letters, because recently runes have come to directly mean the letter. So this letter means A, that means B, so on and so forth. They've kind of done a direct translation. But in the original Nordic usage of them, they were more like Egyptian hieroglyphics almost, because they represented concepts. They weren't letters, they were ideas or concepts. So it's strength. Strength, happiness, love, and wisdom or intelligence. And there are greater meaning to those tattoos on my hand, but again, as I say, they're quite personal, not really what I'm going to get into. But for me, what these represent are not only my personal values, which I believe a man should pursue in life. In the story of Ragnarok, they represent the other sons of Odin alongside Thor. Okay, so my hand represents us all, the sons of Odin. On my body, because I'm on my knees, might as well start here, I have a Celtic torque. So this is very Celtic. You wouldn't really get this necessarily in Viking artistry. But a torque, it can be a necklace that you wear in a similar, you've probably seen them where they're kind of like metal bent around the neck. And they're a bit like the Viking armbands, which they are worn when a Viking comes of age and becomes a warrior. In the same way that the armband represents that a Viking has now become a warrior, or a man, the torque represents a very similar thing in Celtic mythology. It represents that you are born a warrior, you were born free, and you will die a warrior, and you will die free. I.e., you ain't going to ever be taken a slave. And torques could only ever be worn by free men, and men who were born free. Okay, so this represents that I was born free, and that I'll never be taken alive, so to speak. I will die fighting for what I believe in. And the bear represents me. My bear is my personal symbol, iconography. I come from, at least it's believed, so when you read the texts and stuff, it's heavily, my family name is heavily insinuated that we had a large proportion of berserkers amongst our family. If not, we were all berserkers. We were very dedicated to Odin, and so the bear for me, being the symbol of the berserker, is also my personal symbol. I feel a particular affinity to the animal as well, so maybe it's just a coincidence. Now on my chest, the chest tattoo is not fully finished, so this is not a reflection of the true artistry that will be here in the next few days. I think 3 days I'm getting it touched up, but it still looks pretty mean and nasty and pretty damn good. Okay, as you can see, it is both a stag and a deer. Sorry, a stag and a ram. Okay, both the ram and the stag represent to me the values of a warrior more than anything. They are both animals that are typically used to represent warriors within Celtic mythology and Viking mythology, but well, certainly Celtic mythology more than anything else. But for me, they represent the most valuable asset of a warrior, and that's his valour, his bravery, and ultimately his loyalty. But the fact that he will never run away, and that's what that represents, and that's why it's over my heart and in my chest, over my chest, so to speak, because the link to my heart, I have the heart of a warrior. That's what I'm trying to symbolise there with those tattoos. Okay, now I get up, and on my belly, if I focus in a little bit more, you have now what I'm representing, the underworlds that are reserved for warriors, okay, in Viking mythology. So Celtic mythology is a little bit different, and Celtic mythology, Viking mythology, I'm not sure really what afterlife I would personally believe in, although I find myself having a greater affinity to the more Celtic belief set. But nonetheless, I represent obviously the Viking background, because one day I hope, if I do die, well, these would be pretty good places to end up. So the two dogs are the two dogs that were owned by Odin, and Mjunga and Hjunga, I think they're pronounced, but forgive my shittier pronunciation, yeah, I do apologise. But for me, what they represent are the two gates of Valhalla, or more often, how I've artistically kind of see them, the gates of both Valhalla and the unnamed hall, where you went if you were one of Freya's chosen. So the Vanir, as I call it, and the Valhalla halls. So the two halls where you would go if you were brave enough to die in battle against a superior opponent. Then, and obviously you would go to one of these two halls. In the centre, you have this sea goddess, represented by obviously this very feminine figure who has a lot of Celtic tattoos, as you can see, all over her as well, representing her sort of allegiance or lineage herself to the Celtic style, well, Nordic style in this case. But as you can see, she has these kind of almost like these tentacles that you'd expect of a squid. Okay, now typically she was represented by a mermaid, and this is the goddess Ran. The goddess Ran was the goddess of drowned men, and so as Vikings were typically naval warriors, they would raid coastlines, or they would sail to foreign lands to fight. It would be a little unfair for brave warriors not to die in battle, but to die on the way to battle when storms hit and they drowned. Okay, this was not a death to be feared. This was not a death of shame. If you drowned going to battle, that was as good as dying in battle in many ways. Now, you couldn't get into one of these two halls, but Ran, if she favoured you, could take you, and that's why she was the goddess of drowned men. She could take you to her where she lived under the sea, a bit like David Jones's locker in common pop culture, and she is basically a big giant orgy. Basically, if you died by drowning, you would go to have a massive orgy for the rest of your life. You'd eat and have sex. That's it, every day for the rest of eternity, with her and her nine daughters, I think it was. So you'd either go to Valhalla, or, as I say, what I call Vanir, and fight and die every day until Ragnarok came, where you would be obviously very skilled and you would fight in this giant battle against the giants, or you would go and have sex and eat every day until really everything ended and you went, well, oh well, at least I've had a good time in the meantime. So either afterlife, it's not particularly bad. Now this part, the bottom part underneath Ran, or where Ran is sitting on, is a Viking compass. It's just representing her nautical theme. This is the compass that, in my opinion, helps guide drowned men or dead men to Ran, or perhaps the compass that guides men through fate to whatever death awaits them. Okay, bit of artistry and poetic, I suppose, in many ways. Maybe over poetic, but it's what it represents to me. Now I'm going to show you my back tattoo, and I'm going to have to squat to get into the position to try and show you it. I can't see it myself, so I'm trying to remember what's in it off the top of my head. Obviously, I alongside my tattoo artist, designed every tattoo that I've got, so I know what's on it, but I might not be able to point out certain details, but I'll do my best. But my back, right, let's get into position first. I hope you can hear me, guys, but my back, if I'm speaking too loud, it's just because I know that sometimes the camera struggles to pick up the sound when I'm not facing it. My back represents the tree of life. Excuse me 1 second, I'm being called. So guys, I'm back. So as I say, my back tattoo represents my well, first of all, it's the tree of life. Yggdrasil, which is a tree that goes through all the 9 realms of the Viking mythology. Okay, and at the roots of this tree are essentially, like in Greek mythology, the 3 hags, but in this case, the 3 Norns. The 3 Norns, okay, are represented by the women on the back of my tattoo. So there should be 2 here and 1 around about here. Okay, the 3 Norns are the characters, so to speak, or the beings that exist within Viking mythology that are totally aware of everyone's fate. Instead of spinning a wheel, so to speak, with thread and stuff and cutting it like in Greek mythology, these guys are just aware of the fate of every man born and every god born. They know when they're born and they know when they die. They have the ultimate wisdom. They don't act on it, but they know it, because at the roots of the tree, that's where, if you drink the waters, you can gain this ultimate knowledge, and that's where Odin gains his knowledge of foresight when he sacrifices his right eye. He sacrifices his right eye for the right to drink the waters that the Norns tend to. But I can't really show you that one, so I'm not going to focus too much more. And my dinner's ready. That's why I was being called, guys. I'm hungry. Now, I'll see you soon. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was informative. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.